Speaker, it's my pleasure to rise and speak to Bill 32, the Electoral Boundaries Amendment Act. Like my colleagues, I'm also opposed to this bill. The bill increases the number of ridings in Alberta from 89 to 91. I'm not opposed to that as an idea, but I'm more opposed to the reasoning why we're having this conversation. The government wants to make it sound like this is to improve or increase rural representation, but it's actually so that they can win a majority government for the foreseeable future. I'm disturbed by that, Mr. Speaker, because this is injecting politics into a process that is supposed to be entirely independent, and that is problematic. By introducing this bill and this illegitimate process, the government is choosing to ignore the input of thousands of Albertans who participated in the independent commission process. They're ignoring the recommendations of non-partisan Electoral Boundaries Commission, and that should be concerning to us all. These processes are designed to be independent from politics because politicians have no business drawing the lines on the map. We set the parameters by which the Independent Boundaries Commission makes their decisions after they have consulted with thousands of Albertans. It is our job to accept that majority report as written. Really, the government should pass the majority report that was created through that independent process, but instead they've created this whole new illegitimate process that we're really only participating in because we have a duty to defend democracy. I think all of us in this House have that duty, regardless of what side or what party we sit with. I do think that this is the most anti-democratic action ever, and I think that this government has taken several anti-democratic actions over the last 3 years. There have been multiple bills that I felt and my colleagues felt have disrupted the foundation of our democracy, and that is concerning. We're only changing the number of ridings now because the government didn't like the majority report, which is politicizing this independent process. It's stripping away voters' rights to fair elections, and that is concerning. I'm very upset that public consultation is not going to be a part of this new MLA committee or the panel that will be consulted on that. The public consultation in this process is really important, Mr. Speaker, because nobody knows their community better than the people who live in that community. And even just today, I received a letter from the MD of Foothills, Okotoks, and Diamond Valley sharing with me, as part of an MLA that has part of the MD of Foothills in my current riding, their concerns and details about how they work together as municipalities and why they provided the recommendations that they did to the Electoral Boundaries Commission to stay together, because they already work together. It's just like when I presented to the Boundaries Commission, I talked about how Banff and Canmore and the MD of Bighorn have a lot of partnerships and work together. It only makes sense for those things to be in the same provincial riding and work with one MLA. Similarly, I've been fielding text messages from people across my riding who are very concerned about how we currently in Banff-Kananaskis don't know what our riding is going to look like. The majority report and the minority report are very different from each other, and that's causing a lot of stress and anxiety amongst my constituents and the elected officials in my riding as well. Recommendation 5 in the majority report is the one that this government is hitching this bill to, that increases the number of ridings to 91, but it was only signed by one member of the commission, and it was for the express purpose of dissuading the legislature from accepting the minority report. It was not meant to detract from the majority report, and it does not represent the views of the majority of the commission. You can't take one sentence from a multi-hundred-page document and then create a whole new illegitimate process to address it. That is just not fair, and it's not what these independent processes are created to do. In the Select Special Committee on Electoral Boundaries, we proposed a series of motions meant to increase transparency, to assure Albertans that this process, even though it's illegitimate and doesn't really belong here, that we could at least have some transparency and predictability and reduced partisan interference to mitigate the harm caused by the creation of this process in the first place. The results was that the UCP denied every single one of the motions that our NDP MLAs brought forward. The result is that there will be secret meetings between the committee and the advisory panel. Those are allowed. That external partisan influencers and their maps are allowed, and that those meetings, those deals, those interactions do not have to be reported to the public. There's no requirement for bipartisan support of results, and so many more things. Each of these things reduces transparency in a process that really we owe it to the people of Alberta to be as transparent as possible about this. This is the foundation of how people vote and how we create the structure of this House and how Albertans are involved in creating the structure of this House. And to be honest with you, Mr. Speaker, I feel like the members on the opposite side of the aisle should all be very ashamed when they go home and think about what they're doing to the democracy of our province. Democracy is a gift that we give each other. It is not something that we can take for granted. There's a lot of people in the world who don't have it, and we should be very careful about how we treat it. That's right. The members opposite have talked about how this is to improve rural representation. Well, when we debated the motion, Mr. Speaker, I shared some tips with the members opposite on how to improve rural representation, and I just want to share that those tips came from my personal experience over the last 3 years as a rural MLA in this House, representing not only my constituents, but some of their constituents as well. Because I receive emails from a whole schwack, that's a lot, by the way, of rural Albertans who are not being represented by their MLAs, and they are coming to me, asking me to represent them in this House. So, here's what I have done. I have traveled all across this province. I've gone to a lot of small towns. I've met with a lot of people and a lot of stakeholders. And as the Shadow Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, a lot of those conversations were centered around environmental issues. That's no surprise. In every single one of these examples that I'm about to cite, Mr. Speaker, constituents came to me and told me that their MLAs were unavailable to them, that they had reached out to their MLAs and their MLAs did not respond. And so they were coming to me because they felt brushed off and disrespected and ignored. Nope. And I am representing those rural MLAs today in this House because their MLAs are not. I have talked about fracking, the impacts of fracking on drinking water. I've talked about gravel pits and the concerns around dust and water availability. I've presented a petition about feral horses, logging and reforestation concerns, caribou recovery, coal mining, and all of the lack of public consultation and everything else around that. Public consultation around a whole bunch of things like AI data centers. I've also talked about cervid harvest preserves, cumulative effects management in headwaters, including lawsuits from First Nations rights to clean water and land rights, private property issues related to farming, ranching, water availability, recreation and tourism, and flaring limits. I have spoken about all of these things in this House because their MLAs did not want to, Mr. Speaker. So if the idea is to improve rural representation, I highly recommend the members opposite talk to their constituents. Return their emails, return their calls, and meet with them because they shouldn't have to come to me. I'm not their MLA. I'm happy to talk to them. I mean, they're all really amazing people, but that shouldn't be my responsibility. I also want to give a shout out to some of my colleagues, especially my colleague from Edmonton Manning, who spends just as much time connecting with rural Alberta as I do, and who does not represent an entirely rural riding. To improve rural representation in the House, Mr. Speaker, we don't need more seats. We need MLAs who are better at their jobs. That's all. This government should be ashamed that in order to increase rural representation, they need to change the maps. They need to politicize an independent process. All they really have to do, Mr. Speaker, is show up. Show up for their constituents and connect with their constituents and bring those concerns into this House because that is their job. Thank you.